Hi guys, I hope you're well. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about how to budget your interrailing trip, including how much money you need and 30 budgeting tips for traveling around Europe. So let's get straight into it. So how much money you need definitely does depend on person to person and kind of obviously your own financial situation, as well as what kind of style trip that you want and can afford. So the first thing is make sure that the pass that you choose allows you enough money to spend as you go around. The last thing that you want to do is spend a lot of money on your pass and then not have that much money as you're traveling around. I would personally say that it's better to have, a better experience in less places than to have kind of a restricted experience in loads of places. Look at how expensive different countries are on a kind of a general basis, and I will show a list here of which countries are cheaper and which countries are more expensive. And when I went interrailing, I actually traveled on mostly all of the Western European countries, which are more known to be more expensive, but I still saved a lot of money and didn't spend that much. So I've definitely got quite a lot of tips and tricks for you of how to save your money and spend it wisely. So then the thing that everybody always wants to know and how to work it out is how much you're going to spend per day. So my advice would be to kind of break it down into 4 different things: is your accommodation, your food, transport, as well as things to do. Because I would say that accommodation, when you're kind of traveling on a budget, can probably range from anything from £15 a night to about £35 a night. Then you've got food, which can be anything from £10 a day to £25 a day. I'm saying pounds, but it could be euros or whatever currency that the country is in. Transport, some days it could be 0, you could be walking everywhere, but other days it could be maybe up to 20. It depends on kind of what you want to do. And then things to do, again, could be 0. You could just choose to do free things all day, but again, I would say that could kind of go up to about £20 as well on a kind of a budget vibe. So with all that in mind, looking at like the lowest cost to the most expensive cost, I would say that your trip could vary from around £40 a day to £100 a day. So it definitely just kind of then depends on what budget you have and how much money you're willing to spend. Once you kind of know that, then you can just start to kind of look just for the cheaper options in things to kind of keep it on that lower end. Or if you're happy to spend a little bit more, then you don't have to restrict yourself too much to just the cheap options. And I would say that some days, could be less than £40 a day, but I definitely say it's always important to just kind of budget a little bit more, just to give you that little wiggle room and make sure that you've kind of got some money, spare for emergencies and things like that. Be flexible with dates. So say when you're booking your accommodation or you're looking into it, if you just kind of have a look at either day, either side of the day that you're planning on staying there, sometimes price can vary so much. Sometimes as well, you can save money by flying to your first destination or flying home from your last destination, because these won't count in your travel days. These flights could be really cheap, and it definitely then just maximizes your time within those places. Say that your first destination was quite far out in Europe, it saves time and money for traveling on that train all the way there and having to stop off along the way when you don't actually need to. Then there's lots of ways of saving money when it comes to accommodation. The 3 cheapest options for accommodation are definitely hostels, but AIRBNBs can also be really cheap. And also, if you're traveling alone, then COUCHSURFING can be quite a good and cheap option. Look at where your accommodation is, because this is really important when it comes to saving money, because sometimes accommodation that's a little bit further out from the center location can be cheaper, but then you need to compare that cost to the cost of then the transport cost of getting into the center and just working out which one is the cheapest. You can also save money by traveling on night trains. Most of the time you'll probably need to book a reservation for these night trains, which may cost a little bit of money, but definitely probably not as much as a night stay in accommodation. To make sure that accommodation has good cancellation policies, because especially with the trips like interrailing, and when it comes to uncertain times like COVID, even though hopefully we're more out of it now, you still want to kind of have that flexibility and good cancellation policy just in case things change, and that you won't lose your money if you have to cancel. If you're hoping to plan your trip quite thoroughly, then definitely booking your accommodation and things to do in advance can definitely save you money in the long run. But also at the same time, I know a lot of you will kind of want to go with the flow a little bit more, so I would then suggest keeping an eye out on deals like Groupon and Voucher. And also when it comes to booking those hotels, speak to the hotel or hostel directly, because sometimes they can offer you a cheaper rate of the website that you're looking at it through, and try and negotiate with them. I mean, obviously I get a bit anxious by doing that, but some people are just happy to do so. So if you don't ask, you don't get. When it comes to food, try and find accommodation that either has kitchen facilities or has breakfast included, and you can kind of load up on your breakfast. Go to the supermarket. This can be so much cheaper than eating out all the time. I actually took, you know, like sachets of porridge around with me, so that in each destination I never actually had to buy breakfast, and that, you know, those sachets of porridge literally like cost hardly anything, and that was my breakfast sorted for the whole trip. I'd then say when it comes to food as well, just try and focus on the local delicacies. You know, if you're really tight on a budget, you just need to think, can I get this at home, or is this something that I can only get here? And then if it is something that you can get at home and you are tight on that budget, then maybe it's not worth it. But at the same time, for someone like me who's a big foodie and you just want to be having a good time and having good food, even if you have had it at home, like pizza for example, that is where I would prioritize, you know, my spends. But it's completely up to you, and maybe just a kind of good thing to think about, is it worth it? I'd also suggest like eating further away from the centre and all the prime tourist spots is a good way of finding cheaper food as well if you want to eat out. Also, this food is normally better, you know, it's more like authentic local food, you know, supporting independent businesses. So this is one of my favourite things to do anyway, so I definitely suggest it's a great thing to do. If you are eating out, then maybe it's a good idea to share some food as well. There's something on the menu that is quite expensive and all of you want to try it, then maybe it's a good idea to share that dish, and then just, you know, at least then you've tried it, you know what it tastes like, and you've had that experience. But then you can also fill up on more of the cheaper options on the menu as well. But obviously we know that pre-drinking is a good way of saving money, so especially if you're in a hostel or even in an Airbnb, having a few drinks before you go out is a good way of saving money. The next thing is to bring your own water bottle. This saves you so much money and is so much better for the environment. There's so many different places to fill up your water as you go around in the cities. To make sure that you do some research on the transport within the cities or locations that you're going to, even if this is whilst you're traveling and you're on the train, just having a Google of kind of the best and cheapest ways to get around once you're in that location. Obviously walking is the cheapest option, but also things like bikes, as well as, you know, buses, trams and trains are also going to be much more cheaper than taxis. So I definitely say taxis are your kind of last point of call, and even if they are, then maybe look at Uber before a taxi, because Uber is normally cheaper. Walking tours or audio tours, these are one of my favorite things to do when traveling in a new city or location. A walking tour is normally free, and they do just have like a tipping system at the end where you just tip them what you think they deserve. So obviously if you're with a few people, you can all just chip in and you've spent like, you know, £2 or something. And also audio tours as well, there's a lot of those that you can kind of download on your phone, which cost like hardly anything, and it's such a good way of kind of filling your day and exploring different things and seeing things that you'd normally just walk past as well. Research things like a backpacking guide to Paris or free things to do in Berlin, because I always find that those, you know, kind of blogs and stuff, people have put all that useful information out there for you, so definitely use it. Get recommendations from the locals of things to do and things to eat, and often they'll know cheapest things and also some of the best non-touristy recommendations. Avoid tourist traps. So obviously you're going to probably go into those tourist destinations, but whilst you're there, don't spend any money unless you really feel the need to. Stay clear of people trying to rip you off. Sometimes a good way of kind of saving money and, you know, not being charged so much on the exchange rate is by having a travel card. When I've been traveling before, I've used a Fair FX card, but there's quite a few out there, so definitely have a research of which one is going to be best for you. and sometimes a credit card can be better as well instead of a debit card for things like exchange rates. And relating to that, if you are going to get any money exchange, then it's probably a better way to save your money by doing it before you go, and especially not doing it in the airport. Normally the best place to do it is in your bank at home. If you really do need to pull money out of ATM when you're traveling, normally you can get charged quite a lot by doing so. So if you are going to do, maybe consider taking a little bit more out so that you don't have to keep doing it. But just be aware of, obviously, if you're carrying a lot of cash around, store it in different compartments. If something does get stolen, then it's not all of your cash gone, and you've kind of got different bits in different pockets, different purses, different bags, so that you've always got something. Most places now you can kind of just use your card. Try not to carry too much cash with you. Then also look at getting maybe a local SIM card, because data roaming can now be really expensive and not always part of your phone package deal. Travel off season if you can, so just before the peak times like in spring or autumn. These are normally cheaper and also less busy. Try to haggle. You know, a lot of these places are kind of set up for tourists, so if you can kind of, you know, try and negotiate a better deal, sometimes it does work well in your favor. Number 30 is to not limit yourself too much and spend your money wisely. You know, you want this to be an experience of a lifetime, so, you know, you need to just prioritize and think, you know, this is where I want to spend my money. As I mentioned before, for me, I absolutely love food, so I'm more willing to spend money on good food than maybe doing certain activities, but you might be the opposite. So definitely just kind of think of what your priorities are, and definitely just ask yourself, is it worth it? You know, that extra pint that you had last night, is that worth maybe losing out on tram ticket the next day? But don't limit yourself too much, because you do want it to be the best experience ever. So I do hope that this helped and kind of gave you some really useful tips of being able to spend your money wisely and budget, and also gave you an idea of how much money you'll probably need to have to be able to go interrailing. Do let me know in the comments below if you've got any suggestions so that people can kind of read and pick those up as well. Let me know, of course, if you've got any more questions or thoughts about interrailing. I'll do my best to answer them for you. But if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel so then you don't miss out on any future videos. I've got more interrail and travel content to come, so I really don't want you to miss out, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.